Yes, thank you. Do I not have to wait for the little red box? No? Is that it? Right, thank you. So welcome to this meeting of Barrow Council's Audit and Governance Committee. My name is Councillor Anne Burns and I'm Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee. May I first of all remind you of some of the domestic arrangements. It's important that all participants conduct themselves in an appropriate manner. Please put your microphones on silent, on your mobile phones on silent. Participants must ensure their microphones are muted throughout the meeting. If you wish to speak, you must raise your hand via the raised hand facility in Zoom and only unmute your microphone when invited to speak. Please do not interrupt speakers. Members are reminded that they should not have alternative communication lines open, i.e. other Skype chats or chat lines. If members do lose connections to the meeting, we will adjourn for up to 10 minutes to assist them in reconnecting. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being broadcast live to the internet. The whole meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt items. To vote on matters, I will ask Democratic Services Officer to manage this process. At this point, members will be requested to unmute their microphones. After a brief pause, a mover and seconder will be requested and a roll call of members will be undertaken. Please reply with I vote for, against or abstain, then remute your microphones. That's the formalities over, so let's proceed, members, with today's business. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence, so I'll hand over to the Democratic Services Officer to do a roll call of members, officers and then external auditors present at this meeting. Hand over to Sharon. Can you do that roll call, please?
Thanks, Chair. You just say present, please, if you're in attendance. Councillor Burns?
Present.
Councillor Aswad?
Present.
Councillor Callister?
Present.
I've had apologies from Councillor Ronson and I've got apologies from Councillor Shirley, and we have Councillor Pemberton substituting for Councillor Ronson. So Councillor Pemberton.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Thompson.
Present.
And officers, we have Susan Roberts, Director of Resources.
Present.
Debbie Storr, Head of Legal Governance and Monitoring Officer.
Present.
Keith Jackson, Head of Internal Audit.
Present.
John Penfold, Corporate Support Manager.
Present.
Gareth Kelly from Grant Thornton, External Auditor.
Present.
And Richard Anderson, Grant Thornton, External Auditor.
Present.
That's all, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. So agenda item 2 is urgent items, and this is to know any items which the chairman considers to be of an urgent nature. I haven't any items that have been reported to me be urgent, so we'll move on. Thank you. Agenda item 3, delegation, to receive notice from members who may wish to move any delegated matters non-delegated, and which will be decided by a majority of members present in voting at the meeting. I haven't got any items that will be so moved. No. Agenda item 4, admission of press and public, to consider whether the public and press should be excluded from the meeting during consideration of any items on the agenda. And I don't think there are any items. Somebody advised me no. So agenda item 5, declarations of interest, to receive declarations by members and or cooperatives of interest in respect of any item on this agenda. And I don't think anybody has done that. So agenda item 6, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of October. Yes, 1st of October. Any members, please, would you like to confirm those minutes as a true record? Those that were present. That agreed?
Sorry, Chair, it's the minutes of the 3rd of March, not October.
But I haven't got it on here. Right, sorry. I'll go back there.
That's all right.
Yes, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of March 2021. Members happy to agree those minutes?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Agenda item 7, public participation. I don't think there's anything on the agenda. We haven't heard of anyone wanting to participate or raise anything in this meeting. Okay. So agenda item 8 for decisions, and a handover to Mrs. Roberts for the statement of accounts.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is the statement of accounts for 2019-2020, or the year ended 31st of March 2020. Keep getting my years mixed up because normally we would have done this by now, so apologies if I get that wrong. So what we've got here is the statement of accounts presented to the committee. There is a further report with the annual governance statement, then a report from the auditors, the audit findings report, and then another item, a further item around approvals. So this at the moment is me presenting the statement of accounts to take any questions from members. So the statement's attached. It's obviously quite a big document. The narrative report within the statement is actually a summary of the financial plus non-financial activity for 1920. I've attempted in the report, the covering report here, to summarise that further, to take the key highlights to present to members. So I'll just talk through those. There is reference within the statement to report to the executive committee. They were presented last year, and I've referred to those as background paper. So there is further detail, but I think for today I'm going to cover the highlights. So the statements, we've got like the whole statement for the authority in terms of the reserves and the revenue. We've got housing revenue account with a ring-fenced separate set of statements. We've also got collection fund, which is council tax and business rates, and also the cash flow is presented. So there's a number of financial statements, which as I summarise in terms of results into the narrative, to get like that round picture, it's like annual report. That more quality type information is included to give that whole picture for the year. So I've highlighted, taken out in the report and highlighted the performance aspects. So that's the use of resources, not just financial, but assets and staff. That the whole, how do we take what we bring into the authority and produce something and put that out there? So how do we make that difference, not just strategically but also operationally, because the services that we deliver are outputs as well. So there is a note on the section that deals with service performance within the statement. There's also around governance, which is picked up more fully in the annual governance statement. Also the objectives of the council. We've got a piece about values and behaviours this time. That was a framework we introduced 2 years ago, but it's still very relevant and is still being implemented and rolled out through the organisation, everything that we do. And it is a very transparent way of showing accountability to the public. We are transparent in all that we do, but the values and behaviours framework just embeds that stronger. So I've drawn that out into the report. Obviously the priorities, everybody knows we've got 3 key priorities in that enabling element to all of those, which covers all our services, and there's work ongoing at the moment to align resources and services and functions to delivering those priorities. We've got a slightly more traditional arrangement for services at the moment that doesn't quite naturally fit behind the plan, the priorities. So there's work underway to align those much more strongly. In terms of financial information in the narrative, it's really looking to demonstrate how we've delivered against the budget. So obviously there's a plan at the start of the year, a financial plan, as well as having that priorities and service delivery plan. And the end of year outturn position is really looking at that and reflecting on what worked, what didn't work, and why. So we've got general fund, obviously both funds balanced, but general fund had a call on reserves for just over £500,000. That was for one-off items of spend. projects, transformation work that were all that the purposes the reserves were set up for. So we set money aside and draw it back into to cover those costs as and when we incur them. They're not part of the core budget. Quite often they are transformational to achieve a saving for the ongoing budget, but the actual spend is dealt with through reserves, funding from reserves. Housing revenue account had a contribution into reserves, and that was primarily because of sort of fluctuations in the planned maintenance programme. It's a huge programme of work. All kinds of things can delay projects and or kind of make them run a bit longer. So sometimes it's a later start, sometimes it is a longer actual delivery time span, and that funding will come back into the revenue account as and when those programmes pick up. The profiling of maintenance each year is not necessarily flat, so this the way we use reserves is to deal with that volatility, if you like. So there isn't need to keep finding money each year. We use that volatility reserve to try to maintain the budget within revenue for planned maintenance. So that has gone into reserves, but will come back out as needed. The collection fund results, so the council tax and business rates, both had a slight deficit. That's dealt with under precept and arrangements and will return to revenue or be recovered from revenue in future years. We do set money aside for those impacts so that it doesn't kind of create a spiky revenue budget in effect. So we will deal with those deficits through reserves as one-off funding. The change in the balance sheet is noted. There's a few changes within the asset valuations, pension valuations and liabilities. There's also changes in cash and the borrowings that we have. So like treasury items in effect have created a little change as well. In terms of reserves, usable reserves are up, but primarily that's because of capital resources, and that's sort of spent through the capital programme. So we have a multi-year capital programme. So where we have receipts, they're not. We try to get ahead of ourselves. We don't want to find the receipts for the year we're in to spend. We need to have those accumulated before programmes are commissioned, projects are commissioned. And similarly, we have capital grants that haven't been spent in year, so they're carried over. So those balances comparing one year end to the next have increased, but are spent within the programme over the next 4 to 5 years. For treasury management, we've got really not a lot of changed. There's a loan matured as expected. It's a house revenue account loan that was repaid in March as planned, and with general activity in terms of investment income that we try to generate. I think that was probably the last good year, if I can call it that, for a little while. We won't see much being earned on temporary cash balances in 2021 or perhaps even next year. There is a full statement on Treasury that goes to the Executive Committee through to Council as well. I think that might be done. I'm losing me timing on which year I've done, but I'm sure that's been done. Another key section really is the opportunities and financial resilience section, because whilst the statement is somewhat backward looking, it still needs to look forward, because the whole principle behind the preparation of the statement is that the council is a going concern. So that is not just looking back to say that yes, we look like we were, it is looking forward as well to say yes, we still will be. So there's a section in there that reflects on the, again, financial and non-financial aspects of what the council is doing. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? What are the financial sort of underlying assumptions that do get us there, that do kind of create that resilience? So there's a section in there that reflects on what's going on. So that's in terms of, there's a little bit of a reflection on COVID impacts. Obviously that will come through fully in the 2021 statement. But we've also got the priorities, the major projects, the growth that we're hoping to bring in to the borough, and the medium-term plan that sits behind that. So the medium-term plan, again, has been represented or reforecast, reprojected and brought to the Executive Committee, and is balanced in the medium term. But whilst that's good, and it does give us a strong base to look at decision making, and if we need to reallocate resource, it is a matter of moving it around. But at the same time, there's nothing in effect that's spare. So if something comes up, it does mean looking at, well, what can we shuffle? How can we realign resources once again. So it's the big exercise of realigning against priorities will be done in this year, and hopefully that will be enough. But we do need to keep that as a live document, I would say, more than ever, really. Strong budgetary control, strong project management, business cases, and medium-term live document. Because I say, you know, we really need to keep looking forward, and we're not quite out of the woods with our financial position and COVID implications. So there is this kind of monthly requirement to report into government, which we are doing, but it does need a reflection internally as well to make sure that what we're doing stacks up and we can deal with anything that is coming out of left field. You know, we need some kind of contingency within that. So that's very much how it's all based now, but it's only as good as it is at that point in time. So already I submitted that to Executive Committee at the start of this month. I need something more for April, for May, for June. It is very much, I say, live, moving feast. So I hope I've drawn that out in the report, but that was my intention. It's not just backwards, it is forwards as well. And I know at the moment Audit don't see a great lot of that. It does go through the Executive Committee, but I feel that I really need to start including something on the quarterly agenda for Audit Committee, because otherwise you just get the outturn and you don't get to see the rest of it. So you don't even see the budget. I know you do as a whole council, but I think that there are elements of that really could be brought to yourselves to see that story through the year and not just have the year end position. So as I say, the statement is now presented as it is, but there is still some audit work to conclude, and I'll sort of pick up on that and the approvals part of the agenda, if that's okay. But yeah, that's my summary of the accounts so far. Just as an example of what you may see in the statement for this year that we're in, our budget was set as 10 million. If all of the grants that have come through the council are included, we're up to 48 million. So it's going to look very different. So I think I need to be trailing that with you a little bit. So it's not just what happened there. So there's quite a lot of change just in the 1 year. And I think more regular information would be, I'll take my direction from you, Chair, but I think it would be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. You know, reading through this report, there's an enormous amount of work gone into it. And you're quite right, we do need to look forward, and the work that's gone into developing the budget and these papers is tremendous. So I think we should give our thanks to Sue and the team. And I know there's lots you're talking about need to do, but it's been an exceptional year. And I think that demonstrates from what you've been saying about the different grants that have come in and the accountability for all of that money rests on your department. So thank you for that. I'll just ask anybody if they've got any questions or comments for Sue before we... I mean, it is about already coming up with ideas about where we want the authority to be. But to do that, you've got to have the money and the budget in hand to be able to do that. So it's quite right we have that trail and put ideas into practice. We need to be able to fund it. So thank you for that, Sue. So that's page 13 up to 123 and 124. And we're moving on to, if members agree, there's a recommendation. We received the statement of accounts for 2019-2020. Members happy to agree that recommendation? Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item, which is agenda item 9, starting on page 125. And I think, is this John? Or yeah. John Penfold. Yeah. Thank you, John.
Okay, so this is the annual governance statement. As part of our governance process, involves the preparation and publication of an annual governance statement. And what I'm asking members to do is to approve this annual governance statement. For the chair of this committee to sign it, and for the chief executive officer of the council to sign it, and for us to publish it on the website. It will sit alongside the accounts information. So the key things from this year are, if you go down to page 135, relate to the governance arrangements and internal control, and particularly the head of internal audit's annual opinion statement. because there's quite a few restricted assurance and zero assurance items that came up throughout the year. And what we've done is we've put an action plan in place to deal with these. A lot of it relates to contract management, which we know has been an issue in the past. And what we're doing now is we've bought in, or borrowed in, support from Cumbria County Council, but also BE Systems. And we're now going to adopt a project management approach to setting up contracts and also managing those contracts through the various phases. So we see that as being a solution to some of the issues we've had in the past, but we still have to deal with those issues. So members will probably remember we used to have the contract management checklist, and that's where we had a lot of issues because the checklist wasn't completed in a timely manner. So head of internal audit was having to go back and dig up the information retrospectively. So we're now that we're adopting this project management approach, all the information that's required will be set out and will be monitored by a management team on a monthly basis. So we're anticipating that this will have the desired effect or deliver the project management that we're looking for. So there's several items that are listed there and the action that we're going to take. So if you've got any questions on that, I'll be happy to try and answer them. And then in addition, we've obviously had stuff around COVID this year where we've had to put things in place that we wouldn't have expected to in the past, and the impact that COVID's had on delivering the council services. So I've just highlighted a few of them. We managed to keep the majority of council services going throughout COVID, but we, in addition to the normal services, we had all the business grants that had to be administered, and I think there was something like 10 or 12 in the end, all separate business grants that we had to administer. Sue's mentioned about the change in the budget, and obviously we lost quite a lot of income that the council normally gets. Car parking, leisure, all struggled under COVID. We had to pay additional money to the waste contractor because people were in lockdown at home, doing up their gardens, creating more waste, not taking their cars to work, so the cars were parked on the streets and the bin men were taking longer to get in and pick up the bins and things like that. So the council had to pay for additional facilities and bin collection crews in order to accommodate that. So it has been a very, very different year. So if you've got any questions.
Thank you, John. And that's again demonstrating the different way we've had to work and the other things that are affecting us and will affect our budget for a long way going forward. There's a good amount of work. Anybody? Tony?
Thanks, Anne. Just want to say a vote of thanks there, John. Obviously great work that you continue to do in your department and a good report. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. So, members, actually, if there are 3 recommendations there on page 125. So the recommendations, members, we approve the annual governance statement, and we think the feedback is that, you know, we understand what's going on and saying that. You agree that I should sign the letter for the annual governance statement, and the annual governance statement be published on the council's website. Does everyone agreed with those recommendations, please?
We have a
Thank you
mover
very
and a
much.
seconder, please, Chair.
I have a seconder, please.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Thank you.
So I've got Councillor Callister moved and Councillor Aswad seconded. And can I
Yes.
just take a roll call and vote, please? Councillor Burns,
Agreed.
Councillor Aswad,
For.
Councillor Callister,
Agreed.
Councillor Pemberton,
Agreed.
and Councillor Thompson.
Agreed.
That's unanimous, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Sharon. Members on to agenda item 10 on page 149, the audit findings report, and I think I'm going to hand over to the Director of Resources. Sue? So,
Thank you, Chair. I'll be handing it over to Gareth, I think. Sorry.
sorry. Right. Gareth, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, the audit findings report in front of you under item 10. I just want to draw your attentions to pack page 153 and 154. So that's pages 3 and 4 of the actual report. I'm just going to give you some of the headline messages, and then Richard Anderson, the engagement manager, is going to take you through a little bit more detail in terms of our overall findings for the 1920 audit. So those of you that are long-standing members of the committee will know that our work is split into 3 broad areas. That's the audit of the financial statements, our value for money conclusion work, and whether or not we've had to exercise any of our additional sort of statutory powers during the year. So in terms of, I'll just take each in turn just to give you a headline, and then I'll hand across to Richard to take you through the report in a little bit more detail. But on the financial statements, the good news is that the audit is substantially complete. We have got 2 areas that we are just needing to finish off work on, where we've just received some further information earlier today, and that is on and around floor plan areas and on the housing stock dwellings valuations. So once we have completed those 2, we will be in a position to sign off. We anticipate giving an unqualified opinion, and the good news is that any of the errors that we've found have not resulted in any adjustment to your primary statements, which is a good position to get to. There are some disclosure changes which are outlined in the report, but I suppose the good news story on the financial statements is that we're proposing to give an unqualified and an unmodified opinion for the 1920 accounts. You will see that last penultimate or last paragraph on page 3, pack page 153. It's important to highlight to you, and I think I mentioned this in the last audit committee, that we are including an emphasis on matter paragraph. It's not a qualification, it's merely us emphasising to the reader of the accounts about the uncertainties around land, buildings and dwellings valuations, and the council's own share of the assets that it has in the council's share of the local government pension scheme, direct property investments and investments in unquoted property funds. So this is a national issue, and I just want to give you, as those charged with governance, that assurance that where these 2 areas have been material, which they are in your accounts, we have taken the same approach nationally. And it's just emphasising what your valuers are telling you in terms of, in the context of COVID, around the valuations at the end of March 2020 as a direct impact of COVID hitting. It has heightened some of the uncertainties around the valuations at that point. So that's just to highlight that. But overall, as I said, we aim to give a true and fair view on the council's financial position and your income and expenditure for the year end. So turning over the page to page 4, pack page 154, just to cover the other 2 key areas of responsibility, value for money and statutory responsibilities. On value for money, we've concluded that the council has got proper arrangements to secure economy, effectiveness and efficiency in its use of resources, except for its arrangements for ensuring policies and procedures in relation to procurement and contract management. Now, again, members will be aware of this, that we have given various briefings on this. This is similar to the except for qualification we gave back in 1819, and ties in with the last agenda item where John talked about the recognised weaknesses that you have and the actions that you're proposing to take around that. So again, we're proposing that we have the same qualification this year in and around that area. Now, we obviously had to take this through national panel and moderation that was the judgment that Richard and I and the local team came to, and it was supported by our national team. But just leading on to my third area of responsibilities around statutory duties, and whether under the Local Audit and Accountability Act 14, whether I've had to discharge any of those powers. And I'm pleased to report that I don't intend to use any of those powers, which means that we can certify closure of the 1920 accounts. That said, you will see what's written there. We have had to give serious consideration to the exercise of statutory recommendations under Section 24 of the Local Audit and Accountability Act. And that is really because of the ongoing issues with procurement and contract management. Now, we do recognise that I've decided at this point I'm not going to exercise those powers, and the national panel did support me in that view. But on the grounds that we know as a council you are starting to improve your arrangements in this area, but I think it's just important to highlight the importance that the momentum is maintained by the council on this, and that you as those charged with governance also make sure that you monitor progress, and that the new project management approach that John outlined on the last agenda item is brought through to fruition, and the improvements that are needed are made on a timely basis. So overall, it's a clean bill of health on the account side. The value for money, we've still got the except for area, and statutory duties in terms of 1920, we're not exercising any of those. And I would just like to take this opportunity to record our appreciation. It has been extremely difficult, as we outlined at the last audit committee, in terms of the difficulties that the finance team have faced. And we've worked alongside Sue and Chris in particular to arrive at this point now where we're very close to signing off the accounts. So at this point, Chair, I'm happy to take any high-level questions, or it may be appropriate for Richard just to give a very quick run through on some of the other key areas of the audit, and then we can maybe take questions at the end.
Thank you, Gareth. I will ask Richard to run through, and then I'll ask any members to ask any questions, both of you. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just pick out some key elements of our report. So I'll start on page 155 of the pack, and that's our report, page 5. We just confirmed the materiality that we've used for this audit, which is 896,000. So that's what Gareth's true and fair view opinion is based on. We also set a lower threshold of 45,000. We call our triviality threshold. Just so you understand what that is, if we were to find anything in the course of our audit above that amount, we would report it to yourselves through this report. So that kind of outlines the basis of our work. Moving through the report onto pack page 156, we outline where the significant risks were on the financial statements audit, and this is where we've done the most work. So as you'd expect, key area was the impacts of COVID-19 on the financial statements. And really, what we're saying here is the key finding is what Gareth has described earlier around the impact of the pandemic on the valuation of property, both that owned by the council, but also the council's share of the property investments to the pension fund. Other than that, we were satisfied that the impacts of, we draw attention to that material uncertainty in relation to those valuations, and we're satisfied that the impacts of the pandemic had been appropriately reflected in the financial statements. Moving through the report onto page 157, there's two significant risks there around the management override of controls, and the revenue cycle includes fraudulent transactions. These are presumed significant risks on all audits. So we reflect there that we've got nothing to bring to your attention in relation to our work around management override of controls. With regards, the revenue cycle includes fraudulent transactions. We just highlight that our work in relation to that risk did identify some instances where the council system for accounting for contract income, there's some the controls that the council has put in place were not always followed in relation in all the cases we looked at. So we've not identified any misstatements in relation to that issue, but we did identify some instances where the process wasn't followed. and that kind of fits into the discussion we've already had around contract management arrangements and our work on value for money. Pack page 158 outlines the work we've done in relation to the valuation of land, buildings and dwellings. This is the area where our work is still to be completed with what Gareth just described. There's a few bits of evidence we're to review. We have raised a recommendation in this area because I think that there has been some delays in the provision of evidence to us as auditors, and that would be the evidence to support the valuations adopted for both the council's land and buildings and the dwellings, and that has kind of slowed the audit process down because we haven't been able to get the assurances up to, there's been delays in us being able to get the appropriate evidence to support things like the floor areas of the council's buildings or the basis on which the housing stock has been valued. So we've included a recommendation that the council has that information readily available for future audits and just to support the valuations adopted. The other significant risk on page 159 is around the valuation of the pension fund net liability. Again, we've got the issue there around the material uncertainty on property, but other than that, we've got no other issues in relation to that risk. So I'll just try and pull out a few of the key messages from the report. On page 160, you'll note that we've got significant findings in relation to a couple of other issues. We raise a point there around the authority's IT general controls. We bring in a specialist, IT specialist audit team to review the council's controls around key IT systems which impact financial reporting. As we report there, we did identify some control deficiencies around segregation of duties. So it's just important to highlight there that we identified like a weakness in the controls, but we didn't actually identify any instances of that weakness being exploited, and we kind of adapted our audit procedures to gain assurance that there was no risk of material mistake in relation to the issue. So really here we're identifying a potential weakness in an area that management may want to look at, but we'll also say that we were satisfied that this didn't have an impact on the financial statements. So we're just really highlighting it there for your attention, and it's something that we've raised a recommendation that management might want to address going forward. I'll just move through the report and talk a little about the value for money significant risks as the other key area of focus on the audit, as Gareth described. So that's on page 169. We had two significant risk areas on the value for money audit. The first was financial sustainability, and I know Sue in the earlier agenda item just talked a little bit around the council's current financial position. So really that's what we looked at in relation to this significant risk. We looked at the council's outturn for 2019-20, overall arrangements in place to support and monitor the financial position, but also forward-looking at the medium-term financial plan. So overall, our findings in relation to this risk is that we were satisfied that appropriate arrangements are in place to support the financial sustainability, but we do note that there is considerable uncertainty in the medium term, both around the impacts of COVID and future funding of the local government sector, and also challenges around future service delivery in various areas. So we also just raised a recommendation in this area that there's an acknowledgement of that uncertainty, and that the authority continues to kind of scenario plan and prepare sensitivity analysis in relation to this quite significant uncertainty in the future. But overall, the message against financial sustainability is that we were satisfied with the arrangements in place. Moving on to page 171, this is where we outline the work we did in relation to procurement and contract management arrangements. The issues that we draw out here are not new issues. They're issues which have been discussed at this committee on a number of occasions and already on previous agenda items. We also draw out in this part of the report all the things that the council has done to strengthen arrangements and address the weaknesses that have been identified in the past. The reason that we've kind of maintained the except for by money overall conclusion is that our opinion is based on the arrangements that were in place during the 2019-20 years, and we weren't satisfied that these improvements were kind of all enacted or embedded during that period, which is why when we give our opinion on those arrangements, that it remains except for as it was in the previous years. And as Gareth has mentioned, we will continue to kind of review how well embedded and effective the arrangements are going forward. But really, that's what we draw out against that significant risk. So I think they're the key points in terms of our work. I won't go over anything else, but I'm more than happy to take questions on any of the detail of the report.
Thank you, Richard. I'm just going to ask our Director of Resources to make a comment before I fetch members in. Sue, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's obviously I accept the findings, and also would like to say, really appreciated the flexibility of the audit team this year. It has been a real challenge, and they totally appreciate that and worked with us. I'm sure they worked with all their clients, but I felt like we were particularly naughty. We kept moving the dates of things, so I do appreciate that. Yeah, in terms of the recommendations raised, no surprises to me, and I have provided management responses, and they do reflect on what's happened during this year, but also what will happen moving forward. It's not, I'm not able to go back in time and fix certain elements of this around supporting evidence for evaluations, which some of that information, or quite a lot of it actually, is historic, and wrongly I assumed I could just call on that and have that presented to me. No. So we have already started now to put that evidence in place for closing this year, which will close in 2 weeks' time. But I can't have that position repeat. I need to ensure that evidence is there and available and is consistent and maintained, and I will, and that response is genuine. And yeah, so so as well as kind of accepting the report, I'm also asking members to agree, or is that the right word? With my responses. So as management, I am responding, but the committee needs to sort of stand alongside me in that, so that we will deliver these changes. The project management framework that's been mentioned, I do see a session for audit committee members to be trained as far as officers are trained, because you need to understand what you're going to see coming out of that process. So there are like plans to get these things to this committee to understand what changes we've made and how they will improve. We're kind of doing the training with officers now, but for members it'll be in next year. So I appreciate it's not going to be an embedded approach, but during 2020-21, a lot of the major project work has been done with the county. So we've relied on their processes already, which gets us into a stronger position, and we are now drawing that inside to us to use. So I do think we're heading in the right direction, but members do need to kind of understand what we've done, why we've changed it, and then you can see how effective it is moving forward as well. So yeah, in addition to kind of obviously asking the auditors any questions, I am asking members to agree with my responses. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. And I've just got to make a point. As chair of this committee, I certainly stand alongside Sue. It's been an issue that we've talked about for a long time, this contract management. I knew that was part and parcel of that, and that's why we've gone and done a lot of this work to try and close a gap that's been there for a while. As you know, we've fetched different things up, as Keith has actually highlighted things that have been in the system since about 2015, if not longer, to try and close all of that down. We cannot keep repeating that. So all of us as a team together are trying to make sure that we've actually got systems in place that allows us to do that. So Sue is dead right, and we'll stand alongside of that. Any members like to ask any questions or make a comment? No?
Yeah. Just one.
Yes, Alan, sorry.
Just a quickie. I'm a substitute on this committee, and I came in late. I know it was not avoidable, but these things do happen. And a lot of references have been made to pages in the agenda and the minutes, which I haven't got. So I just wondered, is it possible to get substitutes supplied with the copies of the agenda before the meeting? Or is that, do you think that's required?
Well, they are, but we can make sure that we try and do that. But if it's the morning or the day before, it's going to be difficult to get the things posted out. But we'll try and close that gap as well, Alan. We don't want people sitting on these meetings if they haven't got the information at hand.
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Pemberton, the papers were actually sent out. The papers were actually sent out to another member who said he was substituting, but he's not a sub on the committee. So Alan only came in about an hour before the meeting.
Yeah, sorry about
that. They are on the web though to be picked up.
We'll make sure we have a look at that, Alan. But Sharon's right. We try and get as much information out to members as possible. Mrs. Thompson, Hannah.
Oh, that was my Sunday name, man. Yeah, well, I'd like to thank the auditors and thank Sue. I don't know how she's managed between everything else she's done this year, even to produce any accounts. So I really don't, with all the grants and everything else she's had to do, and all the with working with Life Leisure and everything else she's had to do. I honestly don't know how she's got this far so quick. But I think the auditors are going to have to trust us on this contract issue, because every time I've only been on this committee 2 years. And at the moment, I'm wishing I've never actually volunteered, and I probably won't volunteer the next time we have an AGM. But I think you're going to have to trust us on this contract issue. We've made it a priority since I became leader to sort this out, because we know that was one of our downfalls. And I think the management team at the moment are doing the best they can to get this under control, and I know every contract that's going out now will definitely not have the same risk as the ones that went out prior to this. And I think I thank you for your patience with this issue, because obviously it's been going on for a while. But it needed what the council needed was a big shake-up, because it was just too complacent with everything that it was doing, and that happened 2 years ago with me as leader and Sam as chief exec. So I think now we're on the right track. We've got the best officers in situ, and I think we've got the best council plan and policies in situ. We've got money coming into the borough to make the borough a better place to live, visit and work. And I think this council can only look forward and look upwards. Thank you. Now I'll go back to sleep.
Oh, don't go back to sleep, but thank you for that. Any other comments? Gareth, would you like to add anything before we move the recommendations?
No, not at all, Chair. Just to echo the comments there about, we appreciate you're on a journey with the contract management and procurement issues. It's just about keeping pace with that. And as you've said, it's about working together collectively as a council on that front. And yeah, just to re-echo the points, we recognise, and we have been patient because we recognise the sheer volume that Sue and the team and the wider council, for that matter, has had to deal with in these uncertain times and difficult times. So, yeah, just another thank you and recognition that it's late, but we've got there. It's the key thing.
Yeah, thanks, Gareth. Thanks, everyone. So the recommendation on page 149 at two recommendations there. Members happy to agree those recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you. Can I move you on then to agenda item 11, which is the approval of the letter of representation? Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Yep. A couple of apologies with this item. So this is the point where, having members considered the statement of accounts, the governance statement, the audit findings, because there could have been things in the audit findings report that were not agreed and members had to take a view, but obviously we're not in that position. So now it's looking at actually approving signing off, if you like, the statement. Now the AGS has already been picked up in the previous item, so I was going to apologise for having the wrong date on recommendation 2, but it's already been agreed. So apologies for that. And to also agree that the letter of representation attached to this report as Appendix 1 is agreed. Now, because we're not quite finished, I'm still asking for that approval, but there won't literally be a signature today. We need to close the rest of the work off, and in effect, the approval is given by committee on the basis that nothing comes from those final pieces of work that we do. So it is okay to give that approval, but we won't actually be signing until next week, I would say. And then if anything does come up, obviously the delegation to sign is removed and we'll be coming back to this committee. My other apology, so the letter of representation that's attached is a letter that the chair and myself sign off on, and it's a reflection to the auditors to give them assurance of anything that we've missed, anything that's happened since that has an impact on that year and on those statements that we've prepared, and it's totally necessary to get right up to the date that I'm authorising the accounts for issue. So again, that will be forward like into next week before that's signed off. Now in the description, I think it's 3.4.2, on page 186, I have referred to some highlighted paragraphs that may or may not remain, and I took them out. Sorry. So they go in if there are things to adjust or things where members are agreed not to adjust. It's like if there's something coming out of the audit findings report that needs reflecting in the letter of representation, there is some text that sits in there until the outcome is known, and I've jumped the gun and took them out. So I apologise for that. If you're looking for highlighted paragraphs, you won't see any. So we will be using electronic signatures this year as well. Usually I kind of hang on to the chair after the meeting and get everything signed in triplicate, but we'll be doing that electronically this time. But it is kind of, I find it easier to get those 3 presented, make sure everything's been considered in the round, and then ask members to approve those signatures from chair and from myself. So it kind of covers the items you've just discussed as well as the letter of representation.
Right. Thanks, Sue. So members have been asked to approve the 4 recommendations there, but I think Sue is also asking for delegated authority, perhaps along with the chair, to do this later on. Yes? Yes, Chair, the recommendations are fine as they are. It's just we won't actually physically sign today. Yeah. Okay. So members happy? Can somebody move that? And we'll have a mover and a seconder that those 4 recommendations are approved. I'll move. Thank you, Tony. Teresa seconded. Is that all right, Sharon?
Yeah, I'll take a vote, please, Chair. So it's been moved by Councillor Callister and seconded by Councillor Aswad. Can you just please say for, against, or abstain? Councillor Burns?
For.
Councillor Aswad? For. Councillor Callister?
For.
Councillor Pemberton?
For.
Councillor Thompson?
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thanks for that. Thanks for everyone and the work everyone's done. Moving on to agenda item 12 on page 193, which is the audit governance work plan. Is this Sue?
Yes, Chair. Yeah.
Thanks.
So this is the now, I think we reset this last year, so we're now looking to bring the work plan for the following year each March. We're looking to have a March meeting, so that every March meeting now we will bring the business for the year ahead, so we get onto a new cycle. So it's similar format to what we've seen before. It's setting out the terms of reference for the committee and how the reports that are presented will fulfil that. Some of them are every time we meet, some are once a year, some are as needed. So I won't go through what's in the content because it is the same, but what I will highlight is that I've got some green boxes and ticks, and what they are actually carried over items from this year to next. So once we've concluded the audit, there is a letter from the auditor, like the annual audit letter. Obviously we can't bring that yet, so that will carry over into next year, the July meeting, our first meeting, and there's just a number of I think it was four that will carry over. One of them is the new item, the annual report from the chair, so we still want to do that. And we'll work on it before we get to July. But I think it's quite a good thing to establish, and I didn't want to wait 12 months. So we will be a little bit late, but we'll still do it. And in effect, those other items are part of last year's business. So I think we if we get those included, then we've got that full year of work from the Audit and Governance Committee. 2 items that I didn't do, I didn't do in 1920. I haven't repeated them. I've left them in as once, and that's the review of the effectiveness of the committee and the review of the effectiveness of the internal audit function that we have. It didn't feel sort of appropriate to do 2 reviews in a 12-month period. There wouldn't be a great lot of difference. So I've removed those and just left them in as the once for the year, but we will do them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sue. So any questions or comments from members? Other than that, I will ask you to agree the recommendations, which is to note the work plan for 2021-22. Members happy to note that plan? Thank you. Move on to agenda item 13, which is the internal audit annual plan. So I'll hand over to Keith Jackson. Yeah, Keith, there he is.
Hi, thank you, Chair. The Council's plan is, the audit plan is designed to give assurance regarding the internal control arrangements, governance and to a degree risk management. The plan is attached with a total of 930 days. That would be a fully resourced section. We do have a couple of vacancies at the moment. And just to highlight a couple of points within the plan, Chair, we do still have a reasonable amount of time included for contract audit. We included 50 days, obviously, to provide assurance around that area. We've also included some substantive work around potential COVID-related activities, expenditure, exceptional items, and so on. In addition, some post-review regarding COVID grant activity and payments that the council's administered. And lastly, the larger amount of time in relation to the benefit certification that we've undertaken over a number of years in support of the DWP and the requirements for external audit testing. So that's the proposed allocation of the time, Chair, and they're just really the main larger items included within the plan. If there are any questions, happy to take them, Chair.
Thanks, Keith. I would just like to ask one question about your vacancies. Is there any, have you got things planned to fill those vacancies? Because it does hold back some work when you haven't got a full complement.
Yes, Chair. We were close to concluding the recruitment process just really when the lockdown scenario arose, but we have been able to really hold on to at least one of those individuals. So I'm hoping that maybe early within the next financial year we might be able to consider at least one appointment, as an addition to the section.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members? Other than that, you're happy to agree the internal audit plan 2021-22? Thank you, members. Thank you. Move you on to the next item. Keith, agenda item 14.
That's me, Chair.
Sue.
Yeah, sorry. This is the anti-fraud policies review, and we have whistleblowing separate to that. The anti-fraud policies as a bundle, but we do an anti-fraud, let me get the name right, anti-fraud, theft, bribery and corruption strategy and response plan, and a whistleblowing policy separate. Now there is some overlap because we do use a response plan within the main document for whistleblowing, but the whistleblowing policy is easier to be separate because that's the one that we particularly kind of circulate around staff. So rather than have them read the full thing, it allows us to focus in on the whistleblowing as and when needed, because that is, the separate documents are quite useful. So the review, we've reviewed the documents. There's some general changes around changes in post title, that kind of thing. Not really anything to highlight. The only sort of change is in addition around the government secure. So we used to have access to a government secure extranet, I think it was called. It was like the way we would connect to government, and how we had separate mailboxes with secure email addresses. That whole system changed, and there was reference within the policy around how we delivered that, how we achieved that security. I've had to update that. It's now, don't ask many questions about this, TLS, so it's transport layer security. It's more like a one-to-one like identification before you even start corresponding. That's how I would put it. But there is a very technical explanation. It is that end-to-end protection. It's just delivered in a very different way. So there is only a .gov UK email address rather than a GSX email address. Yeah. I think when I was looking at it, I kind of, so why is that in there? But it does need to be in there. It's just getting quite technical. So I've added it in for completeness, and we'll review it a bit more thoroughly next time round, because it'll be an embedded process and it might not need to be brought out into this sort of document. It might sit more within the IT documentation. So it's just in there for completeness. On the back of approving these, well, that slight change, the plan is to push these out again round to staff, make everybody aware, get these versions embedded into our contract documentation, because we have a set of standard documents that go into our contracts. So these newer versions need to be brought into that. They do go to council for approval. They're part of the policy framework, so they'll be on council next week as well for approval. But yeah, nothing major, just revised for good practice.
Thank you, Sue. Any questions from members? Comments, because the whistleblowing policy in there as well as this. So the recommendation is that we recommend that council approve the revised anti-fraud policies. So it will go to council, as Sue said, next week. Members happy to agree the document?
Can we have a mover and a seconder, please, Chair?
Somebody move it, please.
Move it.
Thank you. And second, thank you. Yes, Sharon.
So we've got Councillor Callister moving, Councillor seconding, Councillor Aswad. So can you please say for, against or abstain? Councillor Burns?
For.
Councillor Aswad? For. Councillor Callister?
For.
Councillor Pemberton?
For.
And Councillor Thompson?
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Keep turning this off and on and keep forgetting, don't you? Moving on to agenda item 15, which is the financial regulations of contracting standard orders. I think, is this Debbie?
Sorry, me, Chair. Sorry, it's me again.
I assume, sorry.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, you probably thought Debbie kindly put it together for me.
It's got Debbie down on the thing.
Yeah. So there is a bigger report or a more kind of comprehensive report on the Constitution coming to Council next week. So this is the section that relates to financial regs and contract standing orders. So it's another area where there's an annual review, and for audit, it's to know that has happened. So the actual changes, there's not really any significant change, but normally that process happens through exec onto full council, because again, these are part of the Constitution, part of the policy framework, but it's very important for audit to know this review is happening and maintains these documents fit for purpose, reflecting best practice, any changes in legislation. So it's not here for approval, it's here to note, really. So what I would say is that generally there's, again, little changes here and there for terminology and for titles. I need to avoid using job titles because they change and I get caught out. But what we've done is introduce the programme board, which was been referred to earlier on in the conversation. So that is the senior management team kind of meeting once a month to bring all those projects together. And we're calling it a programme board in effect, and we will have project sponsors coming along to give us updates. We'll be deciding about what comes to members in terms of a bid. You know, is a proposal viable? So there's going to be quite a robust process in place. That's another piece of work that needs to come to this committee. We haven't met yet. We're meeting in April as the first one. We've done a lot of the training and things to start off with, but it was important to get the reference to that programme board within financial reg standing orders, because it's a recognised step in the process. We used to have, I think we called it a capital project board, or capital programme group, project group, something. So that's good, isn't it? I can't remember what it was. It's not met for 2 years. So we just thought, rather than try to recreate that. We'll just set out what we want. So what we want is something that sits alongside the new project management process, which is what we've again lifted from county council. So it's a model that exists and works. So we're going to meet as a board and agree in terms of reference and be very clear that this is the gateway to projects, and you know, will be the body that monitors what's going on. So I say that reference has been incorporated here, and I've done those, I say, odd adjustments to titles where I hadn't caught up with them. I don't think there was anything else that really changed. Sorry, I am just flicking the pages. I don't remember changing anything else. Shall I say that? Let me just get to standing orders. Yeah, no, that's it.
Okay.
I mean, in terms of the standing orders, we still have the checklist process. We've enhanced now the sort of support around that with the documentation around project management, but obviously sometimes a high value purchase isn't part of a project. It can be a load of kit kind of thing. So we still want the same controls and the final account check, that kind of thing. So really it's just a refresh and say recognising the programme board.
Thanks, Sue. So we're not actually moving a recommendation here. We're noting the form. So when it goes to full council, who will that come from the chair of executive to move that? So
yes,
I just need to be clear who's doing that, because it's coming as a recommendation from this committee to full council. But will it go via the exec committee first?
Yes, it's on the executive committee agenda for Tuesday.
Okay, so that's fine. So we're just noting the changes to our work, and no doubt the exec committee will make some comments about that before it goes full council.
Yeah.
Do members note the report? Because that's what we're asking you to do. Thank you. Thank you. So agenda item 16, which is the Code of Corporate Governance. This must be Debbie.
No.
No.
Right, John.
The Code of Corporate Governance is a precursor to the annual governance statement. So in the Code of Corporate Governance, what we do is we set out, this is what we're going to do in terms of governance in the year. And then the annual governance statement is a report on that. So usually the annual governance statement, which was for the previous year, is about 9 months before you see the Code of Governance for the next year. This year it's 45 minutes, but don't worry about that. And just to show our confusion with the time, if you look at background and proposals in paragraph 5, I've actually said it went to management team in 2020. It was actually 21. So I'm just going to go through the highlights of things that have changed. So we have 7 principles of good governance, and principle A is behaving with integrity and demonstrating a strong commitment to ethical values and respecting the rule of law. So improvements that we've done this year is, I'm sure you're all aware of our values and behaviours, and the majority of staff have now attended that. Reason why every member of staff hasn't attended it yet is because we are recruiting all the time, so obviously new members haven't had that opportunity yet. In addition, I'm sure Debbie won't mind me saying this, but having a head of legal and governance has definitely strengthened our approach to presenting reports to committees, because we now go through a very structured process of seeing how this will impact legally, equalities and diversity and that sort of thing. So that's another definite improvement. I'm just trying to find my place. Sorry about this. Next principle is ensuring openness and comprehensive stakeholder engagement. So what we've done in this is we do have transparency pages on the website where we produce all our transparency information. In addition to that, we deliver effective scrutiny for the councils. The scrutiny committee is open for the public. We've established the major project board, which Sue has stolen my thunder and got that in the previous one. And we contribute to and support initiatives that benefit the residents' business of the borough. Recently, this has included the successful funding applications that the leader of the council mentioned earlier. Engaging the public, we're currently revising the customer services strategy, which I think will be published sometime during the summer. We've got a brand new council plan, which the leader's already mentioned, and we assess feedback from all groups, and we develop a balanced approach of delivering improvements based on that feedback. We consider the interests of future generations and service users to ensure that the services we deliver are sustainable and meet the changing needs of our residents. All this has come out in the council plan. So we've also brought in external communication support to make sure that the council's views are given a fair hearing and that people understand exactly where the council's trying to go. Principle C is defining outcomes in terms of sustainable economic and social environmental benefits. Obviously, all these successful bids are making Barrow look a better place. One of the key ones, I think, is the low carbon Barrow project and the work that's going on around that, because that will make the town more sustainable. During the COVID pandemic, sorry, this is Principle D, and this is how we intervene if plans aren't going right, to make sure they do go right and get them back on track. So during the COVID pandemic, we've been actively supporting homeless people, making sure they've got accommodation, making sure that we've given them mobile phones so that they can actually access benefits and that sort of thing. The council has been very busy supporting the contact tracing. We've actually carried out a lot of that tracing ourselves from the Public Protection Service. We've increased the enforcement activities to reduce the number of lockdown breaches. I think I've already mentioned providing the additional waste collections. And obviously at the back of the town hall, we've got a COVID testing station. So we've been very active in responding to COVID. Moving on to E, which is developing the capacity of the council, including the capability of the leadership and the individuals with it. Obviously, there's a proposal for local government reorganisation, which we've been very active in exploring all the options. The proposal has been agreed by extraordinary meeting of the council, and we are now looking at the Bay option, which we'll see what happens. Moving on swiftly to managing risks and performance. We're currently revising the council's performance framework because as part of the council plan process, there will be service plans for each of the individual services. And part of those service plans will include performance from those service managers, so that members will see how well we are performing against our council plan. And essentially, that's it in terms of the principles. Any questions?
Thanks, John. And I've got to say, I mean, I did realise it was your paper because I made a comment at the briefing what a good paper it was, and it just spells out the difficulties we've had and how we've tried to cope with them, where everyone's put something in there. So I've just got to make that comment. It's really telling us the way forward and where we've been and what we're going to do to actually move this council forward. So thank you for that. Members got any questions, comments? So the recommendation is that we're invited to consider and endorse the Code of Corporate Governance. I think we would all want to endorse that, the code that we signed up to. We all want to be good councillors, and we all want to make sure we're doing our job in making sure the residents are getting the best that we can give them in Barrow. And I wouldn't want to think anybody's going to detract from that. So happy to move that recommendation forward. Do we need to take a vote on this, Sharon?
No, we can take consensus, Chair.
So everyone okay? Thank you. I'm getting a nod to the head. Thanks very much. I move you on to then agenda item 17, which is the going concern. And this is Sue. I've got that's
Yes,
right.
Chair, yeah. So we had going concern assessment for 1920 at the last meeting just a couple of weeks ago. This is looking forward. So it's actually looking at this year's accounts being closed on a going concern because of things in the future that show we are a going concern. I keep saying going concern, sorry. So the appendix is the normal format. It's all the things that I've considered that may have an influence on our going concern, and whether there are any bumps in the road ahead that, you know, may kind of give me doubt that we are going concern, so I can't prepare on that basis. There are a couple of, in the appendix, a couple that say pending, and that's around the, I wrote this at the time when the budget council hadn't happened. So it's kind of, those things have happened, so they're no longer pending, but there's also the council next week where there's other documents coming through as well. So those are only pending in terms of being agreed in March. So they'll be there soon. And the one that's highlighted obviously is the accounts, whereas normally I would be putting a date in there, and we just need to get to the end of that process to firm that up. But in terms of the considerations, the process is that I kind of update the text for any changes, take that through management team, which I've done, to make sure it's not just my view, that I'm taking everything into account, and this appendix is the result of that. So I'm asking members to sort of consider what's in there. Is there anything that's not considered, or a difference of view on those things? And if there is support for that approach, then we will prepare the accounts on that basis.
Thanks, Sue. Members got any comments or questions before we move the recommendations? No. So the recommendation 2 is that we agree with the going concern assessment for the preparation of the 2020-2021 accounts. So members happy for that recommendation to be approved?
You have a mover and seconder, please, Chair.
I'll move.
I'll second. Thank you. So moved by Councillor Callister, seconded by Councillor Aswad. Can I please have 4 against and abstain? Councillor Burns?
4.
Councillor Aswad? 4. Councillor Callister?
4.
Councillor Pemberton?
4.
And Councillor Thompson?
4.
That's unanimous. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I'll move you on then to agenda item 18, which is the accounting policies, and this is Sue.
Yep, thank you, Chair. So this is the accounting policies that will feature in the statement of accounts, but they drive how we account for the transactions within the accounts. Obviously, we don't reset these every year. They're last year's brought forward, and the changes in the code need to be reflected. We consider if there's anything that we consider would give a more true and fair view of our finances. So we need to change a policy, and we would have to reflect that in the statement and make adjustments in the prior period if necessary. For going into the 2021 accounts, we are not recommending any significant changes. We reviewed the code, and I've put that in section 3.6, and where I've noted that some of these changes that are coming through do apply to us, but we've got existing policies. We will still review those as well, because what we do is we set the policies out, but I've still then got to go through the process of closing. So if something comes up in that period, I'll bring that with the statement report to identify and pick those out. So I'm not expecting those to actually prompt a change in policy, but I do need to point out that we will consider the detail when we're actually closing. Some of them actually from the code, sorry, I'm in paragraph 3.6, don't apply to this authority because we don't either have that type of, it talks about pooled investment funds, but there's also things that we're not that sort of authority, you know, we don't do those functions. So there is some are us, some are not us, but I've tried to cover them all off. There's quite a biggie is the IFRS 16, which is accounting for leases, and that's been deferred it keeps getting deferred. So it's deferred to start on April 1st, 2021. So while we are closing, we do need to be mindful that we'll need that information when we're closing next year's accounts. So we may as well do that work now than have to come back and revisit the year. So we will be looking at that in a bit more detail, and that might lead to more disclosure in the accounting policies. The one in the item in Appendix 1 that I have highlighted is to do with accounting concepts. And I'll be honest, I don't know when this changed, but I do sadly read other people's accounts, and I noticed that accounting concepts has become quite expanded. So I've reflected on what we disclose in terms of what I would call broadly accounting concepts, and included areas that are perhaps missing. I don't know. I would rather include them, so I have. One of them is, it makes complete sense, is the going concern link back to that paper we just considered. Although I do say right at the start, you know, the accounts are prepared on that basis. It's kind of, well, it's a concept, so let's explain what that actually means. So there is that highlighted chunk, it's page 334 in the pack. That is brand new, but it's not a change. It is just a statement of, well, this is what we do, to be that bit more transparent and clear on how we do that. And I mentioned obviously materiality as well, which there is the materiality that the auditor uses. Obviously my materiality is going to be that bit lower because I'm looking at, well, I'm not looking at all the detail, but I'm looking in more detail. I want things to be accurate, so I probably do have a much lower materiality, but when it comes to putting the statement together, I take a view, and this policy is not setting out numbers, it's setting out how I form that view in effect. So there's nothing in there so that's a difference from what we do now. It's just being that bit more clear and transparent on how and why the statement's sort of compiled in the way that it is. And I guess I don't know if that was an expectation of change, it was just something that I've picked up. But besides that, the only change is really a dating. I have to redate them each year to move them on to the next relevant code.
Thanks, Sue. Has anybody got any comments or questions? If not, there's a recommendation on first page at 2, and it's to approve the accounting policies for the preparation of the statement of accounts for 2020-2021. Members happy to agree that? Do we need a... Hold on.
Yes, please, Anne.
Councillor Callister's moved and Councillor Saad has seconded. You want to take the vote, Sharon, please?
Yes, please. Councillor Burns.
For.
Councillor Aswad. For. Councillor Callister.
For.
Councillor Pemberton.
For.
Councillor Thompson.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. That's the close of the agenda. Before we go, could I just say to officers, there's been some really meaty agenda items there with a lot of work gone onto the papers today. I'd just like to say thank you for doing that. I mean, it's getting us put onto the right way, and we do appreciate it. So thank you very much. And thanks for your attendance, everyone. We'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.